Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports, where today we're going to be taking the temperature of public discourse about presidential politics. And often public discourse is captured by memes. They're very concise and useful ways to capture what the public thinks about their leaders. Take Joe Biden, for instance. His job approval rating was never very high. In fact, he started with the lowest job approval rating of any president we've tested. But it's stuck there above 50% for the first 6 months or so of his term. Now, the Afghanistan crisis did take a chunk out of it, but it wasn't until October and November of 2021 where people were chanting FJB in stadiums across the country that his rating tanked below Donald Trump's. And we have a habit of testing these memes like we did last year with this one. Do you agree or disagree? There's no way that Joe Biden got 81 million votes in the 2020 election. And of course, this is a euphemism for a different phrase that was going around back in 2023. And what we found is that half the country, 49%, at least somewhat agreed with that statement, and 33% strongly agreed. Only 44% disagreed. So a plurality did agree that there's no way that Joe Biden got 81 million votes. Even 31% of Democrats agreed and only 57% disagreed strongly. That's a pretty crazy finding, don't you think? And today we're going to test a few more memes. And if you like that, please like the video and subscribe on YouTube or Rumble so more people get to see it. And hang on to the end because for the first time, we're going to talk about a new signal that's one of the biggest ones that's going to hurt Joe Biden this time around. Now, in 2020, Joe Biden was ushered in on a wave of Democrat votes that was bigger than anything we've ever seen in any presidential election. And how did they do it? It was largely personality politics. Now, Trump admittedly did provide some ammunition with his apparent petulance through crass behavior and, mean tweets. Now, they shrewdly combine that with constant mainstream media ridicule. And if you throw in the fabrication of criminal activity and the continuous impeachment investigations, and then to top it off, a burning issue like a Supreme Court majority and abortion in the crosshairs, all that did have a toll. And people did turn out in droves to vote for what they thought at the time was a return to normalcy. And at that time, the sentiment could be captured by, with a Joe Biden win, the adults would be back in charge of the country. That's really what his supporters mostly thought. And I'd say that our polling for most of his term has supported that with things like the fact that national security is by far his best rated issue. Although the last time we tested it was only a 35% who gave him a combined excellent or good rating. But let's test that meme, shall we? Agree or disagree? With President Biden, the adults are back in charge of the country. 23% of likely voters strongly agreed. Another 16% somewhat agreed for a combined total of only 39%, which is also about how many people vote for him in our current 2024 matchups. 9% somewhat disagree, but 40% strongly disagree. So it's 39% agreeing to 49% disagreeing. Now, here are the party numbers, and very few Republicans agree with that. It's 20%, 11% strongly agreeing, and 58% strongly disagree, with a total of 70% disagreeing. And of course, Democrats agree, but it's only 43% of them who strongly agree and a combined 67% or 2 and 3 that agree. But compare that to the 24% of Democrats who disagree, which is more than the number of Republicans who agree. But look at independents. Only 29% of them agree that with President Biden, the adults are back in charge of the country. And 55% of them disagree. But we also tested one for Donald Trump, and I think this really captures what's going on in the country. Agree or disagree? With President Trump, we had mean tweets, but world peace. 40% of voters strongly agree with that statement, compared to 23% for Joe Biden. Another 16% somewhat agree, for a combined total of 56%. 56% this question, 39% the Joe Biden question. 9% somewhat disagree, and 30% disagree strongly, for 39%. So the agree to disagree here margin, 56 to 39. That's 17 points, which is pretty incredible since Joe Biden was underwater 10 in his question. And here are the party numbers, and Republicans overwhelmingly agree with this, 62% strongly, 80% total, and only 13% of them disagree strongly. And actually, 31% of Democrats also agree that we had mean tweets. but world peace, and 19% of Democrats agree strongly. And only 50% of them strongly disagree. But the independents are where the incredible signal is, and they're really going Trump here. And keep in mind, in the last question, only 29% of them agreed about Joe Biden. But here, 41% of them strongly agree about Donald Trump, and another 18% somewhat agree, for a combined total of 59%, or about 6 in 10 independents. And only 35% of them disagree with this statement. Now, I guess this should be kind of obvious because Donald Trump is leading by double digits among independents this time around. But I also thought it would be interesting to show the race numbers here, most specifically just because of black voters who, 3-4 years ago, I would have expected them to absolutely disagree with this statement. But 32% of black voters actually strongly agree that with President Donald Trump, we had mean tweets, but world peace. And another 19% somewhat agree. So a majority, 51% of black voters, agree about this meme that reinforces really positive things about Donald Trump. And only 28% of them strongly disagree. So it's actually white voters who are the most pearl clutching here. 33% of them strongly disagree. And look, only 21% of Hispanic voters. It's really incredible. That does capture what's going on. And really, everybody agrees with it. In all of the demographics, there were none in which a majority disagreed, except for Democrats, 63%, Biden supporters, 72%, and liberals, 78%. But even then, 78%, didn't you think it'd be like 95%? Now, I told you to hold on because there is a new dynamic that we need to explore about the 2024 election. And what we've been talking about recently is about how black voters and Hispanic voters have swung majorly towards Trump over the last 10 years. But I have news for Biden. He's losing the youth vote. And this is a sentiment that really took off today with Professor Scott Galloway's incredible performance on, I think it was MSNBC. I'll link to the transcript in the YouTube comments if you haven't seen it yet. But essentially what he's saying is that the youth have a right to be angry because the economic situation in this country is just absolutely horrible. And I have numbers to back that up. And here they are. This is Joe Biden's job approval rating among 18 to 39-year-old voters. And back in April of 2021, a few months into his term, they gave him a 63% positive job approval rating. Only 33% of them disapproved of the job he was doing. And amongst all the voters, that really was the highest. Joe Biden came into office barely with even a 55% approval rating. For them to have 63%, 3 months in, like they were really high. They were riding with Biden, so to speak. And now they're not. Only 14% of them strongly approve of Joe Biden. And these are numbers from last week. Another 25% somewhat approve. So that's 39%. And with the rounding, it's actually 38%. So from 63% down to 38% in 3 years. And guess what? Compared to voters of all other ages, the 18 to 39-year-olds now approve of Joe Biden the least. And what's crazy is these numbers were after he just announced his latest round of student loan forgivenesses. So you can't even buy the youth vote anymore if you're Joe Biden. And I'll tell you what, those numbers aren't swinging or a spike either. He's just steadily lost support with young voters gradually over his entire term. And that's not the kind of support that will just show back up. I don't think there's some cynical snap of the fingers he can do to get them to turn out in droves anymore. And in our latest numbers, he's kind of tied with Donald Trump among 18 to 39-year-olds. So if you're Joe Biden and you're going into this election season, again, one in which you're probably not going to campaign, you're probably not going to do a debate, you're losing the black vote, you've just about lost the youth vote, and you've absolutely lost the Hispanic vote. Who's going to vote for you anymore? Right now, I'll tell you what, it's just older, high-income, college-educated liberals. That's the core of his voters. Donald Trump looks like he's winning leaps and bounds with everyone else. And that's why in our latest polling, we have him 8 points up nationally. And again, people will say, oh, you're a right-wing pollster, you're just an outlier. But look at Bloomberg's latest poll. They have Donald Trump winning by 7 in the battleground states. Now, we'll be releasing some swing state polling in the future. Look for it to come out, I think, next month in May. And if you'd like to see it, again, make sure you follow us on Twitter at Rasmussen_poll. Subscribe to us, please, at YouTube or Rumble. It's free and it's just a click. And thanks for watching.